All right, looks like we've got a really interesting deep dive ahead of us today.
Yeah, lots to unpack.
Definitely. Our listener is really interested in cutting-edge healthcare A&D, the impact of diet on cancer.
Makes sense.
So to tackle that, they've sent us a bunch of articles about UCLA Health and then all these different cancer-fighting diets.
Interesting combo.
Right. So we've got info on UCLA Health itself, their website, and then an article from Cancer Research UK about all these alternative cancer diets.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and another one from Healthline that focuses on foods that could either increase or decrease your risk of cancer. That's going to be interesting.
For sure.
And then to take things even deeper, we've got a couple of YouTube videos.
Okay, what are those about?
One is a journal club discussion between Dr. Andrew Huberman and Dr. Peter Attia.
Oh, I've seen some of their stuff before. They're great.
Yeah, super smart guys. And this one's focused on how light and dark cycles affect mental health.
Interesting.
And the other video is all about Dr. Thomas Seyfried and his ideas about cancer as a metabolic disease.
Now, that's a topic that can get pretty controversial.
Yeah, for sure. But it'll be interesting to see what he has to say.
Definitely. So, where do we want to start? UCLA Health.
Yeah, let's do that. What really stands out to you about them?
Well, first of all, their consistent top ranking is super impressive. They've been on that U.S. News and World Report honor roll for 35 years straight.
I know, right? And this year, they hit #1 in California and Los Angeles. That's amazing.
Yeah, but what's even more impressive is what's behind those rankings.
You mean like what they're actually doing to be so successful?
Exactly. It's not just about the numbers, even though those are huge.
Huge is right. 5 hospitals, over 280 clinics. They have almost 4 million outpatient visits a year.
Yeah, but think about this. They're pulling in $1 billion every year for research.
Whoa, that's a lot of money. Where's all that funding coming from?
A big chunk of it is from the National Institutes of Health, which is pretty significant.
So basically, the government is recognizing how important their work is.
Exactly. And all that funding allows them to develop these cutting-edge treatments and therapies, which is probably why so many patients are drawn to UCLA Health.
It's kind of like a snowball effect, right? The more successful they are, the more resources they get, and that fuels even more success.
Exactly. It's a virtuous cycle.
Totally. And you know what else is cool about them? Their mission and vision statements really emphasize kindness and healing.
Oh, yeah, I noticed that.
It's not just focused on, treating illness. They're really committed to the overall well-being of their patients.
Right. It's about compassionate care, not just, ticking boxes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That holistic approach is super important, especially when dealing with complex conditions like cancer.
Absolutely. And speaking of cancer, shall we dive into those articles about diet?
Let's do it. That's where things get really interesting because there's so much information out there and it can be hard to separate fact from fiction.
I know, right? It's a minefield.
Totally. And the Cancer Research UK article we got, they make it very clear. There is no scientific evidence that any of these alternative diets can actually CRE cancer.
They actually put that in bold, right?
They did. They're not messing around.
It's good that they're being so upfront about it.
Right. Because a lot of people turn to these alternative therapies because they want a sense of control or hope when facing a serious illness.
Yeah, I get that.
And, that's totally understandable. Those feelings are really important. But when it comes to actually treating cancer, we have to rely on therapies that have been rigorously tested and proven to be effective.
Right. You can't just rely on hope alone.
Exactly. And, some alternative therapies might even be harmful.
Oh, for sure. Like they could interfere with conventional treatments.
Yeah.
Or cause unwanted side effects.
So it's really important to have honest conversations with your healthcare team about any complementary or alternative therapies you might be considering.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
You got to be on the same page.
Totally. So the Cancer Research UK article goes into some of the most popular diets associated with cancer.
Okay, like what?
Well, there's the alkaline diet, the ketogenic diet, the macrobiotic diet, and fasting.
Ah, those are the big ones.
Yeah. And what I found really interesting is how they lay out the lack of scientific evidence for each of them in terms of actually curing cancer.
Right. They don't hold back.
Not at all. So, for example, with the alkaline diet, the claim is that eating certain foods can change your body's pH, and that'll somehow fight cancer.
But our bodies are actually really good at regulating our pH levels on their own, right?
Exactly. What we eat doesn't actually have a significant impact on the pH of our blood.
So that kind of debunks that whole theory.
Pretty much. Plus, even though an alkaline diet does encourage eating fruits and vegetables, which is great, it also restricts other food groups, which could lead to people not getting all the nutrients they need.
Yeah, anytime you have a restrictive diet, you got to be careful about that.
Definitely. Then there's the keto diet, which is super popular right now.
Yeah, everyone's talking about keto.
I know. And it's interesting because there are some promising animal studies suggesting that keto might actually enhance the effectiveness of cancer treatments.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but we need way more research, especially in humans, before we can make any definitive claims.
So not a cure-all, but maybe something to keep an eye on.
Exactly. Plus, keto can have some downsides, too.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Well, people often experience fatigue, constipation, and sometimes even kidney stones if they're prone to them.
Yikes, those don't sound fun.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
So yeah, not something to jump into lightly. Then there's the macrobiotic diet, which is all about whole grains, locally grown organic fruits and vegetables, seaweed, fermented soy.
That's pretty healthy.
It does, right.
Yeah.
But again, no scientific evidence that it can prevent or cure cancer.
So more of a general healthy eating approach.
Exactly. But like any restrictive diet, there can be downsides, right?
Like what?
Well, macrobiotic diets can be low in essential nutrients like vitamin B12 and calcium.
Ah, so you gotta be careful with that one too.
Definitely. Now, fasting is an interesting one. It's gotten a lot of attention lately. Some studies suggest that restricting calories might enhance the effects of chemotherapy or protect healthy cells from damage.
Oh, wow. That's pretty intriguing.
Right. Like, the idea of using fasting to starve cancer cells is pretty fascinating.
It is. But most of the research on fasting and cancer was still in the early stages, mostly animal studies.
Right. We need more research in humans to really understand its potential benefits and risks.
Yeah, I gotta be cautious with that one, especially for people already undergoing cancer treatment.
Right. And health professionals generally advise against fasting before or during chemotherapy,
Makes sense.
especially if you have other health conditions like diabetes.
Yeah, you don't want to make things worse.
Exactly. And if anyone's considering fasting, it's super important to work closely with their healthcare team to make sure it's safe and appropriate.
Definitely. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Not at all. So it seems like the main takeaway here is that while these alternative diets might have some general health benefits, they're not a replacement for conventional cancer treatments.
Exactly. Evidence-based medicine is key.
Totally. Always got to talk to your doctor before making any big changes to your diet or treatment plan.
Absolutely. Now, the Healthline article takes a slightly different approach, exploring foods that might increase or decrease your risk of cancer.
Yeah, instead of promising a cure, it's more about making informed choices.
Right. It's all about understanding those potential risks and benefits.
And some of the things they highlight are pretty surprising, like they list processed meats as a potential culprit.
Ah, yeah, things like hot dogs, salami, sausage, bacon.
I know, right? Stuff we eat all the time.
It's not about never eating them, but understanding that frequent consumption over a long time could increase your risk.
Okay, so maybe I'll think twice before having that bacon cheeseburger every day.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
The way these meats are processed, using curing and smoking, can create compounds that are classified as carcinogens.
Carcinogens, meaning they can potentially cause cancer.
Exactly. For example, using nitrite to cure meat can form N-nitroso compounds, and smoking meat can lead to PAHs.
PAHs, what are those?
Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. They can damage DNA and potentially lead to the development of cancer.
Got it. So it's not just about what we eat, but also how it's prepared.
Right. And the article mentions overcooked foods too, particularly meats.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Like, is there a right way to cook meat?
Well, cooking meat at high heat can create those same pHs we talked about, as well as another group of potentially cancer-causing compound called HCAs.
HCAs, what are those short for?
Heterocyclic amines. They can also damage DNA and potentially lead to cancer.
So grilling isn't so good then?
It's not that grilling is bad, but it's about being mindful of how you do it.
Okay, so lower heat, shorter cooking times.
That's a good start. And you might be surprised to see dairy products on the list of foods that could potentially increase cancer risk.
Really? Dairy.
Yeah, some research suggests that the growth hormones and other substances in dairy might increase the risk of certain cancers,
Like which ones?
particularly prostate cancer.
Interesting. So moderation is key with dairy.
Definitely. It's all about balance.
Okay, so we've got processed meats, fried foods, overcooked meats, and dairy. Anything else we should be aware of?
The article also mentions refined carbohydrates.
Oh, yeah, like white bread, white rice, sugary cereals.
Exactly. They can cause spikes in blood sugar, and high blood glucose levels have been linked to an increased risk of colorectal cancer.
Got it. So those are best in moderation, too.
Right. And of course, we can't forget about alcohol.
Oh, yeah, that one's a well-known, right?
It is. Alcohol is broken down into a compound called acetaldehyde in the body,
And acetaldehyde is?
a known carcinogen.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely something to be mindful of.
Right. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. The Healthline article also lists foods that might actually lower your risk of cancer.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me about the good guys.
Well, fruits and vegetables top the list, which is no surprise.
They're packed with antioxidants, right?
Exactly. Those antioxidants can help protect your cells from damage.
So eat your fruits and veggies still holds true.
It absolutely does. And nuts are another great choice.
I love nuts. What makes them so good?
They're a good source of healthy fats, fiber, and antioxidants.
Plus, they're delicious.
Exactly. And they may help reduce inflammation, which is thought to play a role in cancer development.
Okay, so fruits, veggies, nuts. What about beans?
Beans are amazing. They're high in fiber, which has been linked to a reduced risk of colorectal cancer.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Plus, they're a good source of protein and other essential nutrients.
Got it. So beans are a definite win.
And let's not forget about whole grains.
Oh, yeah, like whole wheat bread, brown rice, quinoa.
Exactly. They're also fiber-rich and full of antioxidants.
Okay, so we've got fruits, veggies, nuts, beans, and whole grains. Sounds like a pretty delicious way to eat.
It really does. And last but not least, we have fish.
Ah, yes, fish. Always good for you.
It's a great source of omega-3 fatty acids.
Those are the ones that are good for your heart, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some research suggests that omega-3s may even help reduce the risk of certain cancers,
Really? How do they do that?
potentially by reducing inflammation and supporting healthy cell growth.
Wow. It's amazing how much power we have over our health through the food we choose to eat.
It really is. And you also shared those intriguing YouTube videos about metabolic therapy for cancer and the impact of light and dark cycles on our health.
Oh, yeah. Those are next.
Let's dive into those.
Okay, so first up, we have Dr. Thomas Seyfried and his ideas about cancer as a metabolic disease.
He's a bit of a controversial figure, isn't he?
He is, but his ideas are definitely worth exploring.
Agreed. So his theory basically suggests that cancer is caused by dysfunction within the cell's energy-producing centers, known as mitochondria.
Mitochondria, those are like the tiny powerhouses inside our cells, right?
Exactly. And Dr. Seyfried believes that cancer cells have a different way of using energy compared to normal cells.
Oh, interesting. How so?
They rely heavily on glucose, or sugar, for fuel.
Got it. So they have a bit of a sweet tooth.
You could say that. And this is where his research gets really interesting. He believes that by restricting glucose intake, we can essentially starve cancer cells.
Whoa, like cutting off their fuel supply?
Exactly. While allowing normal cells to adapt and thrive.
And that's where the ketogenic diet comes in, right?
Precisely. It's all about shifting the body's metabolism to use ketones for fuel instead of glucose.
Ketones being derived from fat, right?
That's right. Dr. Seyfried calls this approach metabolic therapy.
So using diet to fight cancer.
In a way, yes. But remember, his ideas are still somewhat controversial.
Yeah, we need more research to know for sure.
Absolutely. It's still early days for metabolic therapy, but it's definitely an area worth watching.
Totally agree. Now, the other YouTube video features Dr. Andrew Huberman and Dr. Peter Attia talking about the impact of light and dark cycles on our health.
Ah, yes, that one was fascinating.
I've been hearing a lot about circadian rhythms lately, so I was really interested to hear what they had to say.
It's definitely a hot topic. And they do a great job of explaining how exposure to light, especially sunlight during the day and darkness at night, influences our internal clock.
Or circadian rhythm, right?
Exactly. And that circadian rhythm affects so many things, our sleep-wake cycles, hormone production, even our mood.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that when my sleep is off, everything else feels off too.
Right. And Dr. Huberman even suggests that disruptions in our circadian rhythm could be linked to a higher risk of various diseases.
Including cancer.
Potentially, yes.
Wow, so it's not just about getting a good night's sleep, it's about aligning our lifestyle with our natural biological rhythms.
Exactly. It's about supporting our overall health and well-being.
And that brings us back to that holistic perspective we were talking about earlier.
Right. It's all connected.
Mind, body, and the environment we live in.
Exactly.
It's kind of wild to think that something as simple as, like, getting enough sunlight during the day could have such a big impact on our health.
It really shows you how important it is to be in sync with those natural rhythms,
Yeah, totally. So as we wrap up this deep dive into UCLA health and all these cancer-fighting diets, what are the big takeaways for you?
Well, I think it's clear that UCLA Health is doing amazing things, both in terms of research and patient care.
Yeah, they're definitely pushing the boundaries.
And when it comes to those diets, the message is pretty clear. There's no magic bullet.
Definitely not. Some of them might have some general health benefits, but none of them have been scientifically proven to cure cancer.
Right, so it's super important to be critical of the information you come across and to always talk to your doctor before making any major changes.
Absolutely. And, those everyday choices we talked about, like cutting back on processed meats, fried foods, overcooked foods,
Yeah, those can make a difference.
and being mindful of our dairy, sugar, and alcohol intake.
It's all about balance.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, loading up on those fruits, veggies, nuts, beans, whole grains, and fish.
Those are the real superstars.
Totally. Now, that research on metabolic therapy is definitely intriguing.
It is. The idea that we might be able to target cancer cells by changing how they use energy is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, but we need more research before we can say for sure how effective it is.
Definitely. And the conversation between Dr. Huberman and Dr. Attia was a great reminder of how important light and dark cycles are for our health.
Yeah, they really highlighted how crucial it is to maintain a healthy circadian rhythm.
Right. It affects so many aspects of our well-being.
So what stands out to you from all this information? Anything you're going to explore further?
Well, I'm definitely going to be more mindful of my light exposure from now on.
Yeah, me too. Maybe we should both look into that metabolic therapy research a bit more.
Definitely. It's always good to stay curious and keep learning.
Absolutely. And remember, everyone, knowledge is power. The more you understand about your health, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions.
And never hesitate to reach out to your healthcare providers if you have any questions or concerns.
They're your best resource for personalized advice.
It's been great diving into all this information with you today.
Yeah, this was a really interesting one. And to our listener, thanks for sending us all these thought-provoking articles and videos.
We encourage you to keep exploring these topics and to stay curious about the ever-evolving world of health and wellness.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive. So until then, stay healthy and keep those questions coming.